Today we're going to take a closer look at two semiconductors. One is one of my favorite, AMD, and I know the other one is one of your favorite, Intel. These two rivals continue to go at it with their CPU processors for the consumer market and the data center market. And unfortunately, both these stocks have seen quite a decrease in stock prices as many fear that consumer spending is decreasing. Unfortunately, we are seeing that that's the case for some of these CPUs. So in today's episode, I want to take a closer look at some June numbers that might surprise you and also just show more light into this kind of AMD and Intel competition. If this is your first time here, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, check out the pinned comment for a lot of great links, and also check out my tech channel. So let's get started.
I do want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out fool.com/Jose to get the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
Alright, so as I am recording this episode, AMD is sitting at $73.67. It's super close to its 52-week low of $72.69. We can see from its 52-week high, the stock is down roughly 54%. Next, we're going to take a closer look at Intel sitting at $36.34. Very similar to AMD, it is sitting very close to its 52-week low of $35.88. And from its 52-week low, the stock is down roughly 35, maybe 36%. I do want to say, look at that dividend yield of Intel, 4%. I know there's some dividend investors that are finding this super attractive. Like I mentioned earlier on, both AMD and Intel provide consumer processors for the computer and laptops, right? You either have an Intel CPU or you either have an AMD CPU running on your computer, unless you're an Apple user, which I don't know what that is. Fortunately, for those investors that want to learn a little bit more about this market and just have a little bit more insight, there is a gaming platform called Steam, which shows a monthly hardware update of what their gamers are using. So for the month of June 2022, 68.47% of Steam hardware users have an Intel CPU, and that was up roughly 1.3% compared to last month. So Intel is picking up again on market share. AMD roughly has 31.51% of the market for Steam hardware survey users. I do want to say, even though this is for Steam hardware, I do believe the kind of overall market is sitting at similar levels to this. And we can see Intel still holds majority of the share. Now, if we take a closer look at WCCF Tech, they recently reported an article that showcased the latest sales and revenue share of AMD's Ryzen and Intel Core CPUs from Germany's largest tech retailer, Mindfactory, and it has been published by a user on Reddit. Again, we're only going to take a closer look at a subsection of this market, right? Germany is not the rest of the world, but I do want to say the market there can show at least some kind of glimpse of how the overall market trend might be acting. And the first thing I notice here, these are numbers of CPUs sold between April 2021 to June of 2022, so roughly 14-15 months. Is there has been a decrease in sales dramatically, right? We can see in May of 2021, there was roughly, I want to say, a little bit over 20,000 CPUs sold on that month last year. Now in May of 2022, I want to say there's probably less than 16,000 CPUs. So there has been a nice decrease of CPUs sold just compared to a year ago. The other thing I want to mention, in early 2022 and late 2021, AMD was making most of the sales. We can see in late 2021, AMD was the true winner. Most months selling over 75% of total CPU sold in this Mindfactory store, which again is the largest retailer of computer parts. So AMD was winning. Now if we take a closer look, that number has decreased dramatically. It's now sitting around the 60%. And the reason being is, ever since Intel released their 12th generation CPU, it's starting to get a lot more traction and a lot more people are buying Intel CPU. So this chart actually tells me three things. The first thing is, we are definitely seeing a slowdown in consumer spending, but that's not something new, something we've seen over the past. But here we can see some real data from Germany's largest retailer of computer parts, that the number of consumer spending is decreasing. The second thing I'm seeing is that AMD continues to be a leader in its new tech. AMD has sold more CPUs in the past 15 months than Intel. The third thing it's telling me is, don't sleep on Intel. Since Intel released their new generation of CPUs, they have started to sell more processors. So it's telling me that Intel is not one to sleep on. there's still a heavy competition for the likes of AMD. So we're gonna have to keep a track on Intel and how their future generations continue to do, not only in the consumer market, but also in the data center and server market. So take care, have a good day, and see you next time.